Okay, we're going to start at section 5B here. All right, we're going to talk about some things around warehouse layout. So you want to make sure that you design based on what's coming in, where you need to store it, and what's going out. And there's some notes here under number 1, and just about evaluating the future, thinking about things that could change. And it's impossible to think of all of those things, but it is something that you want to try to take into consideration. You also want, if at all possible, to have everything coming in on one side, being stored or manufactured in the center, and going out the other side, so that you are reducing muda, waste, of doubling back with action back and forth across the warehouse. So like I just said, typically there's no one answer, but your warehouse design should take into account travel time for either your robots or your workers, handling, and optimal storage location. So space consumption in your facility is going to be taken up by a lot of different things. These are some of the things you want to consider. And then you've got to make sure that you have the right kind of equipment on your dock, because it depends on what you're unloading and what you're going to need. Are you going to need shelters so that snow or rain does not get in, or are your dock doors covered already? There's a lot of things that you're going to need to consider. This is the warehouse layout, just showing everything coming in on the left-hand side on the bottom of the warehouse and going out. This is not what's considered, this is called an inverted T, but this is not what's considered optimal any longer. What we like now is to have things coming in on one side and going out on the other side. So this is a U flow, kind of a similar thing. Again, not optimal usually, but we want things, if we possibly can, to go out a different side. This is what we like to see, a through flow. Okay, so some things that you're going to need to consider are on this slide. I know it's a lot of things. You don't need to read every one of these. You certainly don't need to remember them all. I just want you to think through. There are a lot of things to be taken into consideration when you're designing a new warehouse. There's a video here.
Introduce
things. I'm going to skip over that. The ways that you can store. So I showed you, I think the first night, the difference between, say, how we're going to store clothing versus how we're going to store cars versus how we're going to store something like a microchip. So all the different kinds of storage systems are designed for different types of items to be stored. And then we have the opportunity to put things in racks, or we have the opportunity to just stack them in boxes where we can get to them quickly. And you can see right here, a fork truck could get in between these and just take this entire pallet of canned vegetables and take it to where it needs to go. We want to be able to store things in racks, then we need to have, those racks need to be built. The yellow part here that goes sideways is known as the beam, and then the up and down part is known as the upright. And you want to make sure that you have compatible storage size and distance between every beam to accommodate whatever you're storing. If your things can be stored pallet on top of pallet, that's different than if your things are very heavy and they can't. You need to understand the weight capacity of the specific brand of storage equipment that you buy and make sure that it is reconfigurable. So I'm not going to dwell on this, but there's lots of ways that you can decide how you're going to do it based on whether or not your product can be stacked on top of each other or not. I'm going to skip over that. All right, so what we want to do under very narrow aisle systems, this is kind of what you saw in some of the Amazon video. It usually is extremely efficient to store the most amount of product in the least amount of space, but it does take a much different kind of a forklift. You can see the difference between the forklift here, the conventional, and the very narrow. It's got to be it's almost half as wide as the original forklift. And these are generally operated by someone standing rather than sitting. Okay, so cross aisles, if you have something across the center here where this horizontal red line is, this can reduce travel distance, because if this was one solid thing and this was not a break here, to get from location here to location here, you would have to either go all the way around here or you would have to go all the way up here and around. So having these cross aisles can make it quicker to get your picks done. Also, tunnels are a good way. You just need to make sure that all your forklift drivers are trained such that they know how to go through these tunnels without risking injury from any cross traffic. This cantilever system on the left is things like lumber or carpeting, things that are things that are very long and require a different kind of racking than you would see for traditional kind of pallets. These racks can be driven through or used, and what's nice about these is you can get the last thing that you stocked can be the closest, so you can just get it quickly, and then you can get the first thing that you stocked on the other end and just drive right through. There are a lot of demonstrations in this chapter in these slides just to show you kind of what choices you have. If any of you have ever had those containers in your refrigerator that'll hold a 12-pack of soda, and you pull one down take the first one out, and the cans will fall. That's called a gravity flow system, and it's going to bring whatever you need next down just by force of gravity. So sometimes these are nice for certain kinds of things. That's another video I'd like you to watch. Got lots of videos, I think, in this chapter. You're looking at your racking system. There's several things to consider about floor space, about whether or not you're going to need special material handling equipment that you might have to purchase that might be an unintended cost based on what you thought you were buying from the racking system and not taking into consideration that the trucks that you have don't work. You want to make sure that you're using as much capacity as you can. If you think about a Carvana, I use this example a lot, but I think it's a really good example to talk about how they went up. Rather than a traditional car dealer that has acres and acres of cars, they went up, and they certainly have fewer cars than a traditional car dealer, but definitely they have gone up, and then they've used their space more efficiently. I'm going to pass through these videos. Take just a minute.
Operator in
There we go. These aren't going to show very. Okay, so mobile shelving for small parts or things like jewelry, screws, fasteners, things like that, these can be very, very helpful to help to keep things organized. And also there are a lot of material handling and conveyor systems that will allow you to store in this manner and pick directly from the right bin because it knows where things are. So these can be really handy for small parts. Okay, I'm gonna have you look at this and critique this layout for a service parts operation, and you can find that assignment in your assignments.